Green and doing another live 2 in 2 days. So I plan on doing this more often. I had taken some time off, but I think it's so important for us for me, to share some insight with you that basically I don't think a lot of people are talking about, and some people talk about it from a different perspective. I always like to talk about it from a true cultural, historical, and biblical perspective. So that's important. So with that being said, I want to talk a little bit about what I talked about last night. I'm going to talk a little bit about tonight. From the African American perspective, I'm really disappointed in the fact that um, the African American community has been hijacked. We've been led astray. We continue to be led astray. And the reason I say that is because there's a lot of people that I know. There's a lot of intelligent people, people that I've known for years. They're intelligent, they're well accomplished, they have lived a successful, prosperous life, but yet they allow themselves to be hijacked into this whole political realm that divides itself based on race and gender and ideology and party lines. And that's not what it's supposed to be. It's really supposed to be about, what do you believe? What are the principles that you believe are the best principles? And whatever candidate, whatever party lines up or doesn't line up with those principles, you judge them based on that. But that's not what we're into. We're into, if you're in my party, I go by the party lines. If you're not in my party, then I'm against you, even if you have good, valid points that may help me and help my family. And that's not how it's supposed to be. And at the end of the day, the thing that really bothers me the most is, because we as Black people have, for the most part, divided ourselves based on party lines, and because we equate ourselves as Democrats, which is unfortunate. Um, we we, we 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 line up lockstep with what the Democrats believe. And even though the Democrats, their platform is based on things that go specifically against the principles that we as Black people have held to for many years, we still, because we're Democrats, we got to go along and get along. And it's unfortunate. There's a lot of these Black leaders that are put in place, they're bought and paid for. If you look at like Jasmine, someone like a Jasmine Crockett, she's been financed by Alex Soros, who is the son of George Soros. And if you don't know who George Soros is, you should look him up and Google him. George Soros, he's a very elderly man at this point, and he has a desire and a goal to destroy America. And George Soros, he grew up in Europe, and he worked with the Nazis after World War II to help, or during World War II, to displace other Jews, even though he's supposedly of Jewish origin and background. And so when you understand who George Soros is, if you understand any politician who is funded by George Soros or his organization, you should realize that their intent is to destroy America. And I would just say, for the record, I don't care what your experience is in America. I don't understand. Hey, what's up, Willie? I don't, whatever the case may be, I've traveled the world, I've been in other countries, and I will still say that I put America against any other country in the world as the best places to live in the world. And the great thing about America is, wherever you're at right now, you could be in a bad neighborhood, you could have grown up in a bad environment, but there's so many different opportunities that you can go to other places and start a life and prosper, if you really choose to set your mind to it. And so, what's up, Arisa? How you doing? And so, I would just say to you that these people that are what's known as critical theory, and I'll get into that in another video. Critical theory really is deconstruction. Hey, Sada Raf, critical theory is really a philosophy that's based in Marxism. Hey, dude, how you doing, Sophia? Sophia Roblox, good to see you too. Am I worried about our democracy? I would say that I'm not. I am not worried. What I am is, I'm concerned because of some of the philosophies that people are adhering to, and because when we buy in to the lies that the mainstream media gives us without doing our diligence and our research, we could get taken advantage of. And so, anyway, what I was saying about George Soros, if you're not familiar with George Soros, look him up. He definitely is a communist. He's from Europe, and he was working with the Nazis in Germany. and displacing other Jews, even though he was Jewish. But his one of his goals is to destroy America. And so we have to understand that America, which is with all its flaws, I believe that America is still the best country on this side of heaven. So anyway, and with that being said, what has happened is because we've allowed the powers that be, the ruling elite, who and just for the record, those globalists, those ruling elites, those one half of percenters, they're not really affected by the things that affect you. And so what they do is they manipulate us by having us fight based on race or socioeconomics or sex or sexual orientation. They come up with all kind of categories that have us fighting back and forth, and it really doesn't affect them either way. But the more we're fighting against each other in these areas, the less we're focusing on the things that are really important to us. And so again, as African Americans, we have drank the Kool-Aid. We have allowed them to tell us that white supremacy, that the things that Trump is doing is so horrible to us, that those are the things we have to focus on, even though those aren't the things that really make our lives not successful or as successful as they should be. So when you really look at the issues that we're dealing with, these issues have nothing to do with white supremacy. They have nothing to do with the things that the media is telling you to be concerned with. And so we actually, I don't have a way to call in. I'm on YouTube, but you can chime in with your comments. I don't know if I can add a moderator or whatever the case may be. I can make you a moderator if you want to. Uh, we'll have to do it. We'll do it at a different time because right now I'm in the middle of this and I'm not really sure. But anyway, I'm doing good, Jim. How are you doing? It's good to hear from you, man. Good to hear from you. For sure, for sure. Uh, um, Amen. So, Jim, you can do some things. Not sure what exactly the extent of what you can do, but anyway, let's talk about the things that that we are dealing with now. One of the things that I have found out, or I've seen how much they have. I've seen how much they have really manipulated us as Black people, and they manipulated us to make us believe and feel and be really concerned with things that I don't think are things that we should be concerned with. And as a matter of fact, they got us to focus on and fight against things that are in our best interest. For one thing, I've talked about it yesterday. I talked about DEI and some of those things, and I started to talk a little bit also about illegal immigration. And illegal immigration, if you guys don't understand, it actually affects and hurts African American communities more than any other group. And those are statistics that are out there. There's studies that are out there, and it's really pretty evident that that hurts us more. So I think it's ironic that we, who are in the African American community, a lot of people are fighting supposedly to do things that help our community, but yet they end up fighting for things that not only don't help us, but hurt us. And so illegal immigration is something that affects us negatively more than other communities. And absolutely, look at what happened in New York and Chicago, just overwhelmed. And there's a lot of African American families that for years have asked for more assistance. And I'm not here to talk about welfare or anything like that. But these families that have been here for multi generations have asked for assistance from the government, and the government has said, we don't have the money. But yet they found all these millions and billions of dollars to help people that really aren't citizens and have not, contributed to the overall success of this nation. In New York, they had illegal immigrants that come over here. They get five-star hotels. They got thousands of dollars on these cards where they can buy food and do whatever. But yet these Black families who have been here multi-generationally don't have any assistance, and the reason, or very little. And the reason I bring that up is not because I'm pro welfare or not pro welfare, but these same people who have been here for multi generations, these Black families who support the Democratic Party, they say that they don't have any more resources for them, but they found resources for people that aren't even citizens. And so we should be outraged about that. We should stop defending or fighting for these parties and these groups that really have never traditionally have never helped us and have looked out for everybody else other than us. And so one of the things I want to talk about is, and I was in the Navy back in the 90s. And when I was in the Navy, there was a time where the Cubans, they had a mass exodus from Cuba. And so being in the Navy, I was in a ship in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Democrats lost their, yeah, absolutely. I believe that. But back in the 90s, in 1993, I was on a ship. We were in the southeastern part of the country. Do you think that there are things or policies that, if enacted, can really make a change in the minority communities? I do believe that there's principles and policies. If you look at my channel and some of the things that I espouse, even some of the books I've written and everything, it's very clear there are principles that we can really adhere to that will help to restore our community. The two main things, as a pastor and as a person of a Christian, biblical principles and family values are two things that I know if we re-implement or we really focus on them, can not only help rebuild our community, but help sustain prosperity in our community. And when I say prosperity, I'm not always talking about, you're not going to have maybe a Bentley or a Rolls Royce or anything like that, but you'll be able to provide for your family and have a good living if you stick to the principles that we have stuck to for many years. It's only been leave pure education alone. Yeah, I think the educational system is really wrecked because they're not teaching them math, science, reading, writing, and arithmetic. They're teaching them different social, they're focusing on other issues that when I send my children to school, my grandchildren to school, I don't need them to teach my children morality. I just want them to teach them reading, writing, and arithmetic. Absolutely. So anyway, let me talk about a couple of these things that we're talking about right now. Some of these things that we're focusing on that really we should talk about. And so, with illegal immigration, I see a lot of Black people and a lot of Black leaders that are fighting because they believe, or they have espoused, that somehow or another that these illegal immigrants have should have protection under the 14th Amendment. And I need to talk about that. I think that we've been so misguided and so misled. So many of you know the whole story in America where we had indentured servants that started in the 14th, 15th, and even as it pertains to the British colonies of North America in the 1600s, they had indentured servants. And the indentured servitude was they would bring people from other countries and they had to work here for a certain period of time, normally in the Virginia and other southeastern states in the United States. They had to work there. They worked for a certain period of time and they would have their freedom. But then a transition happened about 50 years after indentured servitude happened as it pertains to the British colonies. And I'm very careful to talk about that because there were other countries that were here in America that they also had indentured servitude in the 14th and 1500s, but that has nothing to do with America. America was founded, the starting of America was 1619. The Virginia colonies were colonized by the British colonies, and the British colonies ended up establishing America. So that's my basis for starting. And so anyway, they had indentured servitude. It became chattel slavery. Chattel slavery was a transition where these indentured servants who could work for a certain period of time, now they were actually became property. Chattel means property. And as a matter of fact, there was an African American by the name of Anthony Thompson who started chattel slavery. And when they started chattel slavery, they started chattel slavery, these people became property. And one of the things that occurred was that if a female was a chattel slave, her children also became slaves as well. And I'm going somewhere with that, so please bear with me for a little bit. And so through that process, once the abolitionists came in, they fought against slavery. You had the Emancipation Proclamation, you had other things. Then you had the 13th, the 14th, and the 15th Amendment. So the 14th Amendment was so important because before the 14th Amendment, if a person was born to a slave, they were also a slave. But the 14th Amendment, which gives citizenship rights, and I'm going to read a little bit of the 14th Amendment because it's important for us to understand. I know a lot of us was in civics class in 7th and 8th grade, but a lot of us forgot it. So, of course, you had the 13th, the 14th, and the 15th Amendment. The 13th Amendment made involuntary servitude illegal, but it also made uh, it made a place for if you were incarcerated, right? So a lot of times after the 13th Amendment was passed, many times in the South, in the Jim Crow South, they would incarcerate African Americans and put them on the chain gang. So they were basically became slaves again. But the 13th Amendment was against involuntary servitude, except for if a person was incarcerated. The 14th Amendment gave citizens' rights. And I'm going to read a little bit about that. And this is so important for us to understand because if you don't understand that, again, we have Black people that are fighting for something or for people that aren't benefiting you under the guise that you think they're benefiting you. So the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, ratified the 1868, grants citizenship to all persons born or naturalized in the United States, including formerly enslaved people, and guaranteed all citizens equal protection of the laws. One of the three amendments passed during the Reconstruction era to abolish slavery and establish civil and legal rights for Black Americans. It became the basis for many landmark Supreme Court decisions over the years. So why is that important? Because what the 14th Amendment did is it took away this whole idea that if someone was born to a slave, that they were also a slave or they became chattel property. And it meant that if you were born in America, then you were a citizen, you received citizen rights as an American citizen. So even if you came from, because slavery became illegal now, even if you were born to a woman who was a slave, because you were born on American soil, you now become an American citizen and you have full rights as an American citizen. That is so important, and I'm going to express why. And of course, it was the Democrats who pushed the slavery. They were the slave party. It was the Republicans who was the anti-slave party, and a lot of people don't want to talk about that, but that's a fact. And they didn't switch sides. They just the Democrats changed their strategy on how they keep people enslaved. But anyway, let's talk about this a little bit more. So what happened is now slavery is illegal. Chattel slavery is illegal based on the 13th Amendment. The 14th Amendment gave you full citizen rights if you were born in America, right? But that was specifically attached to people that were born to slaves when they abolished slavery. And it was really focusing on African Americans who were formerly legally enslaved. Now, when your children were born in America, they had full citizenship based on the 14th Amendment. Now, why is this key? The reason this is so key to talk about is because with these illegal immigrants, you have what's called anchor babies. And I'm going to explain that. And I've seen this firsthand. Now, I was in the Navy, and when I was in the Navy in 1993, we went to Cuba and Haiti, and there was a mass exodus from those countries. We would pick people up on the ship. And what a lot of the Cubans, especially because Haiti's a little bit further, but the Cubans were very close. Cuba's only 90 miles from Florida. So what a lot of these people would do, these women, they would be pregnant, 8, 9 months pregnant. And as soon as they got on the United States Navy ship or a Coast Guard ship, or they got on United States soil, they would try to induce themselves to have a baby because they were buying into the 14th Amendment that said, once I have a baby on a U.S. soil, they have full citizenship, right? Because what they were doing was they were taking the 14th Amendment out of context, but they got away with it because a lot of people didn't really force or push the whole idea of what that meant, right? And so the reason I'm saying this is because a lot of Black people got so caught up in trying to fight on behalf of illegal immigrants that they believe that President Trump is trying to overturn the 14th Amendment, and he's trying to take away our citizenship. And it's really absurd and ridiculous. And that's why we have to talk about these things, because Black people have, many of them, the leaders they put in place, these overseers that they put in place, um, they put them in place and they lead us astray. And because many of us don't read or don't educate ourselves or don't understand what's happening, what do? We fall victim to it. So I've heard Black people say, he's trying to do away with the 14th Amendment and make us not citizens anymore. It's absurd. It's ridiculous. That is not the case. The whole problem with the 14th Amendment is that these illegal immigrants were taking and trying to use that as a justification to come over here and have a baby, and that baby would have to be American citizen. And they felt like, if the baby is a minor, I got to stay as well. I've seen it happen personally. I know it was the case many times. But again, that takes away from the context of the 14th Amendment. And when Black people fight for these type of things, it shows that we don't really understand what's going on and we're being manipulated and controlled. So I want us to stand in truth and understand what that represents, because we as Black people, we are fully vested into this country. And I agree, Jim. They've been so indoctrinated, it goes beyond ration. And that's why I mentioned that a lot of these people that I know are very intelligent people, but because of, I believe, the emotional trauma and the emotional triggers, that they are being manipulated to believe something that's absurd and ridiculous. My family, we did our family tree, and I know the farthest I went back is the 1800s, 1811. I think one of our family members, we went back that far. So I know at least from 1811 that my family was here in America, and I believe that some of my ancestors were slaves. They got freedom, and because of the 14th Amendment, we are fully citizens. But because we've invested so much in this country that, I want this country to succeed. I don't want it to fail. I want to hold people accountable. We want to make sure that people understand the truth about history. But at the end of the day, there's certain rights that I want to hold on to that I don't believe other people should get those rights just very casually or cavalierly. They should earn their way to become citizens. And so we got to stop fighting for people that are breaking the law, coming over here illegally, because not only does it hinder us and not hurt us, but it's not fair. It's like jipping the line. It's like if you went to a concert, I'm just using this for example. If you went to a concert and you were in line for an hour standing to see a concert that you really paid your money to and you really wanted to see, and then somebody comes after you stood there for a whole hour and just walked and just stands and walks right in front of you, you'd be upset, because you would say, I stood here for a whole hour, I went through the process, I paid for my ticket, now this person is just jipping the line. And that's really what it is when we don't hold people accountable to them coming over and doing things the right way. And my question always is to Black people, why are you fighting for these people who have broken the law and don't have an actual right there, when you acknowledge that you have fully invested in the country, you put your blood, sweat, and tears into this country, and you should want to hold other people accountable as well? It's just plain logic, Jim. I agree 100%. And so that's the 14th Amendment. And one other thing I want to say, and this just, it goes to Trump derangement syndrome. And I want people to know before I say this, I'm not a Republican or a Democrat. I'm an independent. I was a Democrat for a long time. And so this channel and what I stand for is based on truth, historical accuracy, and what makes common sense. So I want you to understand that. So when we fight against President Trump, many people have Trump derangement syndrome, and so they evacuate the truth. They don't acknowledge the truth because they don't like him. I'm not telling you should like him or not like him, but I'm saying we got to stand in truth. And the reason I say that's important is because many people have jumped on the bandwagon. He's horrible. He's deporting all these people and everything. And some of these people were Obama supporters. And I need you to understand, and I'm reading this article, one of the nicknames that President Obama had was, he was called the deporter in chief, because he had a history of deporting a lot of illegals. And as a matter of fact, when you see these images of families separated at the border, they've been programmed. Absolutely, John. When you see these pictures of families at the border and the kids are in cages and they're separated from their families, And people say, that's so horrible. First of all, I need you to understand that that was Obama who passed that law. And there was a reason why they passed that law. The reason they passed that law is because there's so much sex trafficking and human trafficking that occurs at the southwestern border. And so, unless they could confirm that that child was with their family, they would separate it, because if not, you had these traffickers that were bringing kids over here to traffic them. So they would separate the children to confirm whether that was their family member or not. And if they couldn't confirm it, they wouldn't give the kids to the traffickers, because they believed and understood that this child was in danger. So Obama was the one who implemented that policy. He went to Congress and he got almost, let me see, it was almost $2 billion that this report says. I think it was 1.7 billion, or almost $2 billion. In any event, so Obama went and got money from Congress in order to implement that program. So when Trump comes in office, he said he was going to enforce that program, and he had uh, a zero tolerance policy, which meant he was going to fully, execute that law. But it wasn't his law; it was Obama's law. So the problem I have with people, which shows an intellectual dishonesty, is that if you're upset with Trump because he separated the families, you have to also be upset with Obama, because he's the one who actually passed the law and got the money from Congress to enforce that. And so, again, it just shows how we get so caught up and manipulated by the powers that be. We don't understand everything, and we allow ourselves to be manipulated when we really shouldn't. And so we have to stand in truth and honesty and understand what are the principles that help us. If something helps me and benefits me, I don't care if it's a Republican or a Democrat who passes that law. I don't care if I like the politician or not. I need to stand with the things that benefit me and my family, and the things that line up with my principles. And if it doesn't line up with my principles, then I'm going to reject it, no matter what party it is. And yeah, to your point, that's a great point, Jim. Tom Homan actually worked for the Obama administration as well. So if you hate him and he's a big bad wolf, Trump didn't bring him out. It was Obama that first started working with him, and he's been around for a long time. So anyway, this has been Joe Green. Please like, subscribe to my channel. Please share my videos. I'm going to start back in the saddle again, doing my videos. I've been doing them for a while. I'd stopped for a little bit, but the truth has to get out there so people understand the truth. And as the Bible says, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. Peace and blessings to you. Talk to you soon.